Happy GratiTuesday. Today, I am thankful for my parents who adopted me just 29 years ago. There's a story behind that. One I'll share with you a little bit later. It's messy, it's magical, and it changed the trajectory of my life. But first, let's talk about why this matters to you. If you've ever felt disconnected, restless, or just like you're going through the motions, you're not alone. More than two-thirds of Americans say that finding meaning and purpose in life is a top priority, and yet so many of us feel like something's missing. So in this video, I'm going to share 3 ways to find magic in the messy parts of life. And by the end, you'll walk away with 3 practical shifts you can use to open up to more meaning, more inspiration, and more awe, even when life feels chaotic. As an adopted child, I grew up with a deep sense of wonder. Of all the times and places in history, why here? Why now? Why with this family? What if I'd been born to a village where girls weren't allowed to go to school, or I'd grown up in poverty or a place torn by war? And instead, I was here in a middle class family in the US with opportunities many girls never get. Even as a kid, I felt the weight of that question. What am I supposed to do with this gift of life I've been given? Maybe you've asked yourself the same thing. Why me? Why here? Why now? Those questions haunted me as a kid. And as it turns out, science has something to say about it. In fact, Dr. Lisa Miller, in her book, The Awakened Brain, discovered something fascinating. Our brains are wired to be spiritual. When we feel awe, wonder, or a deep connection, certain circuits in the brain actually light up. And when they do, we're less anxious, more resilient, and even more creative. Spirituality isn't just belief, it's biology. But with the decline of traditional religion, many of us are left searching. And I know that search personally, which brings me to the first practice. Nikola Tesla once described one of his great discoveries this way. He said, "The idea came like a flash of lightning, and in an instant, the truth was revealed." He also said, "My brain is only a receiver. In the universe, there's a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration." I love that image because what's a receiver without something coming through it? For me, I think of those moments as a spark, that flash of inspiration that lights something inside of you. You don't force it, you just make space for it. Scientists today connect this to what they call the default mode network. Think of it as like the brain's backstage crew. When we're not racing through the to-do lists, we let ourselves daydream or be quiet. This is when the network switches on. That's when new ideas connect. When I was 25, my birth father, whom I never met, reached out. The agency told me my birth father was in prison for robbing a bank. Yeah, she told me that first. But then she went on to read a letter from him, and it was beautiful. This man had once been a law student and a poet. He was engaged to a woman he deeply loved, my birth mother, but he was derailed by alcoholism. In prison, my birth father found purpose. He taught fellow inmates how to read. Years later, in February 2005, I was thinking of my birth father. I imagined the humble pride of one of his fellow inmates, a father who, because of my birth father, could now read to his child for the first time. And I thought, if a man in prison can find purpose, there's hope for us all. That night, I woke up with a start and I grabbed a pen and I scribbled one word: random kid. It felt almost like I was taking dictation from somewhere beyond myself. And then I wrote, "Any random kid has the power to change the world." I proceeded to draft an executive summary of an idea for a nonprofit in this lucid dream state. And in the morning, I looked at it and I chuckled. I was like, what was that about? I had no idea. I tucked that slip of paper into the drawer. I didn't realize it at the time, but that was a little seed just waiting to be nurtured. 8 months later, Hurricane Katrina hit. The devastation was overwhelming. I remember watching the news and hearing a woman's voice trembling. Forget FEMA and the National Guard. Where's the convoy of concerned citizens? Oof. That was it. I had to do something. As a mom of small children, I wanted to figure out a way to include them. So we decided to rally children to trick or treat for spare change to donate to relief efforts. That's when I met a 10-year-old girl and her mom with the same idea. The energy was electric, ideas bouncing everywhere. One of their relatives who was taking all of this in spontaneously erupted with applause. And I was like, "What?" And she said, "God really has something cool, magical happening with the three of you." But then came the dilemma. Halloween ended, but the kids weren't done. Their ideas to help with hurricane relief were as diverse as they were. They kept raising money in all sorts of ways, and they kept asking, "What's next?" We tried to hand it off to one of the larger nonprofits, but none of them fit the bill. And that's when I remembered that slip of paper in my drawer from back in February, that midnight spark, random kid. That was the power of one spark. But sparks don't always show up in big world changing ways. Sometimes the magic is deeply personal in the messy stories we carry from our own lives. I've got a messy one for you. As an adopted person, every year we celebrate my special day, the day my family picked me up from the adoption agency. And every year the story was the same. It was rather sweet. My mom would talk about how my sister got all dressed up and they wrapped me in a blanket and it was 90 degrees outside and really warm, but you wrap a baby in a blanket because that's just what you do. And they drove off and there on the corner of Lindale and something, I don't remember the cross section, she looked down and she said, "And I knew you were mine." I love that family folklore. It was special. But here's the messy part. When I was a mom myself, a new mom myself, and we were celebrating my special day again, and we get to the party, and my dad had had one or two, and there was a new person at the party who didn't know the story, so he decided to regale them with the tale. But as he started to get more animated about it, my mom could tell what was going on, and he said, "And then remember when the nun came out?" And my mom was like, "Peter, Peter," and I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Come on, we've told you this story. Come on, we tell this story here." And I'm like, "What about the nun coming up?" "Well, I mean, you know that you were born with a birth defect." "Yeah." "Oh, well, don't, I mean, well, so anyway, the nun comes out and she's wringing her hands and she doesn't have a baby with her. And she, comes up to us and says, 'Have you been told about this child?' We're like, "Yeah, we've been told that, she has a birth defect, but it can probably be, fixed with medical treatment, etc." My dad, this is my dad pretending to be the nun. "Oh," she said, "no, I don't think you're prepared for what you're about to see. This child is grotesque." She used that word, grotesque, my dad said. I could say that now because clearly you're not grotesque anymore. He laughed and gave me a little nudge and hug, and then everything was okay. But I was like, "What? What?" My brother and sister were blown away too. Like, if I had been left in that person's care and my parents who adopted me never came, my life might have turned out really different. But and because I can understand how people might get nervous about what are the medical costs and gosh, maybe we're signing up for more than we thought and blah. But they said, "You know what? This is our child and we are taking her home." And there on the corner of Lindale and whatever, I was theirs by golly. And you know what? My mom was like, she was like, "I didn't want you to know that story." And I said, "Mom, it just makes me fall in love with you all the more." Like, how beautiful that in spite of that person saying what they said, you chose me. And because of them, I've always felt all the more resolved to pay it forward, to serve my purpose. And that's practice number 2. Reframe the messy as a gift. We all have messy divorce, falling out with friends, losing a job. But think about it. So many people who've had those experiences go on to say that it's one of the best things that ever happened to them. Let's allow our messy moments to become the soil where our seeds of purpose can take root. Now, before I share the third practice, I want to give a not so random shout out to this book, Soul Boom: Why We Need a Spiritual Revolution by Rainn Wilson. It's all about how we feed that deep need for meaning and connection, which, hello, that's exactly what today's theme is about: finding the magic in the messy. And in that book, Rain shares a little gem called, it's a game called Kung Fu or Holy Text. Back in the 70s, Kung Fu dropped these lines so profound they could have been lifted straight out of the Bible or the Bhagavad Gita. But here's the punchline. Sometimes even a TV scriptwriter can stumble onto a truth. What matters isn't where the wisdom comes from, it's whether it resonates with you. And speaking of resonance, let me take you to the other side of the world because that little midnight spark called Random Kid didn't stop with Halloween. It carried me all the way to South Africa. I was there with NBC Nightly News celebrating the opening of a life saving water pump, one that would serve more than 2,000 people in a rural community. The pump had been funded by 3 classrooms of kids in the US who had joined the Random Kid movement. I'll never forget stepping off that Jeep, hearing the drums, the parade, the students in uniform, and then the choir. 80 children, voices rising, eyes locked on their director. And then suddenly I heard it. The most beautiful song was about Random Kid. Thank you, Random Kid, they sang. You're so great. Tears poured down my face openly. My birth father had planted a seed, and in gratitude for life, I carried that seed forward. It nourished so many children's ideas, which helped bring life saving water to children in South Africa, who now sang the song of our souls back to us, echoing through time. Ah! It was awesome. We are all random kids, random people just searching for purpose. And in that movement, we found it. Dr. Lisa Miller talks about another part of the brain called the salience network. Think of it as a brain's highlighter. It tags certain moments as meaningful, like when coincidences line up or you feel like the universe just gave you a wink. That's why synchronicities, those powerful signs, feel so moving. Your brain is wired to notice them. Maybe you've had synchronicities too, those moments that feel too aligned to be random. And that's practice number 3. Notice the synchronicities. So here's where we landed today. 3 simple practices for when life feels messy. Make space for the spark, reframe the messy as a gift, and notice the synchronicities. And because it's GratiTuesday, I want to hear from you. What's one thing you're grateful for right now? Please put it in the comments because gratitude multiplies when you share it. And here's the truth. Life is always going to hand us a mess, but sometimes the broken pieces are the one that catch the light. Sometimes the mess is the only way magic can get in. That's the magic in the messy. See you next Tuesday.